You can get the True Test 8-piece roller painting kit for less than $4. I mean, a 9-inch roller cover and a frame and the roller extension for painting ceilings and the paint tray and the trim brush, everything but the paint for less than $4. True Value is more than just a name. Because your neighborhood True Value man's a hardware expert. He can counsel you on home upkeep and projects. And he has connections worldwide so that through True Value, purchasing at once for 5,000 stores and dealers, he can offer you prices that no one hardware store could possibly match. When you walk in under that True Value sign, what you see is what you get. True Value. Paul Harvey. Good day.
Critic Circle, Jack O'Brien, and my guests today are all from Radio City Music Hall in one way or another. We have Muriel Duffy Hake, who was a Rockette in the very first show at the Roxy. That was back in 1932. We have Paul Hakon, who danced there, and Charles Francisco, who's written the book, The Radio City Music Hall. That's an affectionate history of the world's greatest theater. I don't think he could write a nasty one, do you?
Not really. The place is just too much of a part of everybody's lives, or just about everybody's lives, for the past 46 and a half years.
I had a little mixed feelings. I never wanted to close. Mm-hmm. But technically, I had to laugh at some of the people who were fighting to keep it open who hadn't been there in 20 years.
That's unfortunately the sad part of the whole situation. You know?
I hadn't been there myself in a couple of years, maybe a year and a half or 2 years. I can't remember exactly when. But movies I see in a screening room. Mm-hmm. And but the stage shows have always been great stage shows. They opened with a stage show. And Charles Francisco, why don't you just give a fast, because you'll have to, we take up the whole show, list of the artists who were in that first show. I think Edwin, was he in the first one?
Who?
Edwin?
No, he was.
No, he was in the opening. He was
one of the few that wasn't.
He was the opening 1914 show at the Palace Theater. I get them mixed up because they're both pretty historical theaters.
Well, it's the list went on because it was probably the most spectacular list of prominent entertainers ever assembled. In today's terms, probably the most famous man, and according to Brooks Atkinson at least, he pretty well stole the show, was Ray Bolger. Yeah. And of course that was long before he became the Scarecrow. But they had, and it was a very eclectic show. They had people like I'm thinking of Patricia Bowman, who, of course, was America's leading ballerina, who was also one of the stars of that opening show, as she was in many other shows that followed. They had a lot of people from England, music hall people. A fellow that also went over very big was a man who just billed himself as Dr. Rockwell, but he did the phony quack medical doctor.
His
thing.
Billing was Dr. Rockwell, quack, quack, quack. He was one of the funniest men in the world.
And you saw him?
I saw him probably around that time in my hometown of Buffalo, but he used a banana stalk and on it hung coat hangers, and he used that for a biology lesson, and he pointed to it with a teacher's what do you call it, a baton, a pointer, and it was very funny and rather naughty, but it was double entendre, so it wasn't bad. And unfortunately, his son was the Rockwell who was the Nazi.
Oh, is that right?
Who was murdered? Yes.
Ah.
It broke his heart. He lived in Maine. He was a close friend of Fred Allen's. And he wrote right up until he died a year or two ago. He wrote for a magazine in Maine. He used to send it to me.
Well, I know that in Brooks Atkinson's review of the opening, he had a lot of unfavorable things to say, but he seemed to find a special delight in both Ray Bolger and Dr. Rockwell.
Oh, of course.
But they had...
Harold Kreutzberg was there, Martha Graham.
Martha Graham and her dance
The famous travel lecturer, what was his name?
DeWolf Hopper.
DeWolf Hopper.
Yeah.
No, DeWolf Hopper was an actor. There was another one, a travel lecturer. What page are you on where I might get the first...
Page 18 or 19 is where I have the entire program.
Okay.
And a lot of the music was done by Dorothy Fields and Jimmy McHugh.
Yes.
Yeah. Matter of fact, Dorothy Fields performed in the show as well, in one of the numbers of the show.
Yeah. And they had a whole sequence from the opera with Tito Ruffo in the Carmen scene.
And the big draw, really, although they came at the end of the show, so a lot of people missed them because the show ran so long, were Weber and Fields, who came back to do their famous numbers together. But the show went on, and it was a very varied show. They had a whole excerpt from Carmen, the opera. They had classical ballet. They had many things commissioned especially for that program, the opening program of the music hall. And it was quite a show.
It was just too much show, because by the time we got to the grand finale, which was a minstrel show with the entire company on stage, half the audience had left, because by that time it was pretty close to 12 o'clock or so, and it was just too much.
Too much.
Well, just to run off some of the names here. Now, Ray Bolger, of course, they had the whole Tuskegee Choir. They had Taylor Holmes, and he was the travel lecturer that I remember.
Yeah.
Doc Rockwell, the Sisters of the Skillet. There were two men. They had a show in early radio.
Yeah.
The Sisters of the Skillet. The Berry Brothers were a black dance team that were absolutely sensational. There was the Roxyettes in those days.
Yes, well, it was sometime after that there became a conflict with the names and
because
with the Roxy.
Yeah,
it was
Roxy
changed to Rockettes.
Roxy Rothafel had started the Roxy Theater, and then he was hired by the Rockefellers to come over. And then when there was a squawk from the Roxy about Roxyettes, then he called them the Rockettes.
Because they had already started other types of shows, and it was a conflict of interest, shall we say.
Yeah.
But on the original bill, they were called
Rockettes.
the Roxyettes in the opening show.
Jan Pierce was in the opening show.
Jan Pierce at that time, of course, was known as John Pierce, and happened to be just a friend of Roxy's, and Roxy appreciated his voice, but at that time he wasn't the great star that he
used to be in a lot of the radios. Roxy's Gang, there was a radio show at that time, and that's sort of how John Pierce came into the Roxy, supposedly discovered him just playing fiddle in an orchestra.
It was a fantastic show, and it was too much, I guess. Just too much. And then I know that they put in the movie The Bitter Tea of General Yen with
Akim Tamarov.
But
Barbara Stanwyck.
But the man who played
Niels Esther.
He was what the women used to call a beautiful man.
Really? Yeah.
He's good.
I don't think I've seen him. But
Well, he didn't last too long in pictures. He was in silent pictures, then he did pretty well in talkies. Now, we're ignoring another guest we have here today, Paul Haycon. I saw Paul Haycon first at the Winter Garden, and what was the review, Paul? With Reginald Gardner?
With Reginald Gardner, that was at Home Abroad.
Because I remember the marquee very well, because when I came to get my tickets, who else was in it besides you? And
Beatrice Lilly.
B. Lilly?
Bad company.
Let's see, was it? No, it wasn't. Well, I think it was Herb Williams.
Herb Williams,
yes.
Herb Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bert Lahr was in the next one.
Bert Lahr was in the next one, which was The Show Is On.
The Show Is On. Also, I think, with B. Lilly.
Yes.
That's right.
And that's where she did the moon things over the audience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She sat in the moon and went out over the audience. B was the greatest, hokiest.
And she said, I kiss the right bank, I kiss the left bank, I kiss the Montparnasse.
Yes. Yeah, she's very ill now. She doesn't know anybody, and she's living back in England. And I had her phone number to call her when I ever get over there. It was Henley 2. Sounds like B. Henley 2. Mm-hmm. Now, Paul, what did you do at the music hall?
Oh, I did so many things at the music hall. I couldn't possibly remember all the things I did, but I wasn't a regular at music hall. I was a guest performer there.
Yeah, but no, you were a star. Come on, let's face it, Paul.
He's one of the most modest people you'll ever meet,
really.
Paul Haycon.
One of the many shows I did there was with the picture I Remember Mama.
Which is interesting because
you were in the picture.
No,
you worked on stage.
The movie. I worked on stage.
Yeah, and that opens here Thursday night in the musical version.
And another show that I did there was Anna and the King of Siam, when they had the movie Anna and the King of Siam.
Yeah.
Those were some of the longest runs there at Radio City Music Hall. I believe Mama was for 6 weeks, and Anna and the King of Siam ran 8 weeks.
You realize it was a black and white picture? I remember it in color, but it wasn't in color.
No, that's true. Yeah. That's very true.
That was Rex Harrison, of course.
Mm-hmm. Paul told me an interesting story that I have in the book about the fact that you never had an understudy.
I never
or at
had
least
an
one never went on for you.
Well, I had one who became very famous. You don't know who it is.
No, he didn't tell me. He said he wouldn't tell me.
I'm not going to mention his name, but I had a very famous person who became famous later.
Subsequently?
Yes.
Gene Kelly?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to mention.
You wouldn't tell me
mention the name. because the person is famous, and I wouldn't want to embarrass the person, really.
Why? Everyone's got to start somewhere.
No, I know. But what happened was I sprained my ankle, and the understudy went up to rehearse. He sprained his ankle, so I had to go on with a sprained ankle.
So he never missed a performance still. His record
That's
was
right.
intact.
Yeah, there's nothing more titillating than being told that you know somebody
Sure.
and then won't tell you who it is.
But that was a good guess, that Gene Kelly. Now, I never thought of him, but that would be a logical guess.
It would be about the time he was first around New York. He was a chorus boy.
He became a movie producer. Not movie producer, but movie choreographer. Shall I tell you?
Yes.
I'll tell you. Very good friend of mine, Michael Kidd.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
That's wonderful.
About as good as you can get.
See there, Jack? You got more information out of him than I did.
I guess you thought I'd beat him up.
No, I didn't think that.
Duffy, that's Muriel Duffy Hake. What was it like? Were you the captain in the first?
Oh, no, Emily Sherman was the captain. But I believe it was in 1947 that I was made an assistant captain, and from then on went from assistant captain eventually to become captain. So it was a period of about 23 years.
Who were some of the girls who came out of the Rockettes and went on
well,
to...
of course, one of the names that comes to mind right away is Lucille Bremer.
That's right, and she was a Copa girl, too, yes.
Copa girl, Adele Jurgens, Vera
Became
Ellen.
a star. Vera Ellen, I knew.
Yeah.
Because I met Vera when she was in Connecticut Yankee at the Martin Beck Theater.
Vera was, she was just a kooky gal.
If she turned sideways, she disappeared.
Yes.
That's how there she was.
Oh, she was just like a stick.
Yeah.
Russell Markert told me an interesting story. He and Vera came to a parting of the ways because Vera was, as he said, was a beautiful girl and an excellent dancer. But the Rockettes' idea, of course, is that nobody is supposed to stand out. And he said Vera would always throw her leg up a little higher than everybody else's, or her arm up a little higher than somebody else's, and so she always stood out.
Like to add a little touch here and there, and that this was not Russell's idea of precision.
And who are some of the others? I will give my nomination, Pat Driley.
Yes, she was
in Ballroom.
Ballroom in the ballet, of course, for many years. Beautiful dancer, great sense of humor. But, there's so many people, not that many girls, and I can think of most of them.
They had a Miss America.
Miss America, Marie Fletcher. Now, I can't remember what year that it was. I'll have to look it up. We had another girl, Sherilyn Patel, who was Miss New York in the pageant and was in the runner-ups, didn't really come out as Miss America.
Any boys come out of the ensemble?
Oh, a lot.
Well, Leonard Warren, of course. He
became an opera singer who died on stage.
Yeah.
Robert
Weedy, John Pierce, Robert Merrill started there. But the Leonard Warren story is rather amusing because he was just always trying to get a break to do something more other than just a Glee Club member. And they, just as much as said, well, go out and get a little experience, young man. And he eventually won the Metropolitan Opera auditions and became a very famous...
He died during a performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a marvelous man.
Well, while you're talking to Duffy, I think one of the things, I devote an entire chapter to Duffy because, as I say, she is the complete Rockette. Because the astounding thing about Duffy, besides the fact that she's very talented and very beautiful, is the fact that she was a Rockette before they were Rockettes. As a matter of fact, she joined them in Chicago in 1928 when they were known as the 16 All-American Rockets. And then she traveled on to New York with them, where they did a Broadway show. She made a couple of movies with Russell Markert.
Which show?
Well, we came to New York to do Rain or Shine, the Joe Cook Tom Howard show. And when we got here, the book, they'd been having trouble with the book, and it was postponed for 6 weeks. And that's at the point we met Roxy and Leonidov, and we were booked into the Roxy for a week and stayed 5. And then the show was ready. Rain or Shine was ready to go into production. And, of course, when we left, Roxy could see nothing but to have his own line. And that's when the 32 Roxyettes performed. And he had his own troupe of Roxyettes.
So Duffy not only opened the music hall, she stayed until 1971. So she was a Rockette before they were Rockettes, and was a Rockette from 1928 until 1971.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about this lady to me that always surprises me and everybody else who's heard the story is the fact that she danced on the stage last in 1967, was it?
1967, yeah.
So you can figure out she was somewhere over 21 at that age.
Yeah, I was very, very plus at that point.
And she danced in the rehearsal hall, of course, all the way up until 1971.
After, you remember the strike at the music hall was in 67. Sure. And at the end of the strike, why, a lot of things changed as far as operation. And
you went from 36 to 30.
Well, no, the 30 only came a few years ago.
I know it was sometime after the strike.
But anyway, we had to have a swing girl. We had to have replacements for girls that were sick. So I was out of line then, from then on, and went in to replace girls if they were sick or injured or whatever.
Until?
And I was doing this until 67.
Wow, isn't that great?
But after that, I had to, learn and...
It's 39 years you were dancing.
That was a lot.
Yeah, I should say.
But then after that, I more concentrated on paperwork, routine, operation.
And you knew my friend Nat Carson.
Oh, I should say so.
Nat died a little too early.
He sure did.
He was a designer, and a good designer. Matter of fact, he designed a Connecticut Yankee in 1943. It opened at the... It was the last Rodgers and Hart show. And there was a revival of the original, and Larry Hart wrote a couple of new songs for it, including To Keep My Love Alive, which was one of the great funny material songs of all time. Nat Carson did he was the nominal producer. Actually, Dick Rodgers produced it. And he was the nominal producer because Dick didn't want to be credited as a producer at that time. And he produced it only to stop Larry Hart's heart from breaking, because once Dick went in partnership with Oscar Hammerstein, which in Oklahoma. Oklahoma opened March 31st, 1943. And by that time, Larry Hart was a hopeless alcoholic. And he couldn't work anymore. There was no discipline left in him at all. And so Dick knew he could get a little bit of work out of him. So I think he wrote 2 or 3 new songs for the revival in the fall of 1943. And that's shortly after, within a few weeks after it opened, Larry Hart died. And Nat handled all the production problems and did the design.
Yes, he was a fine designer.
Excuse me, Duffy Hake, who was been in charge of the Rockettes at the Music Hall since 1928. Gardner Haycon, I almost said.
Gardner Haycon.
Paul Haycon, who danced many times at the Music Hall. And Charles Francisco has written a book, and it's a picture book, and it deserves to be a picture book. It's an affectionate history of the world's greatest theater. The Radio City Music Hall is the title, and the publisher is Dutton. We have a message.
Here are some theater notes. The American Theater Wing's Tony Awards are coming up on Sunday, June 3rd. They'll be broadcast live on CBS. The national telecast will begin at 9:30 that night. Broadway's Tony nominees include such prominent artists as Jack Lemmon, Jane Alexander, Alec McCowan, Constance Cummings, Vincent Gardenia, Joel Grey, Angela Lansbury, Robert Klein, Alexis Smith, and Neil Simon. The show is written by Hildy Parks and produced by Alexander H. Cohen. Ironically, their production of I Remember Mama, Richard Rodgers' new musical starring Lee Ullman, will open too late to be a contender this season. I Remember Mama is previewing at the Majestic Theater now to virtually sell out business. When Lee Ullman sings Richard Rodgers' new songs in I Remember Mama, she lights up the stage. See I Remember Mama at the Majestic Theater. Charge tickets by telephone by calling 246-0730. That's I Remember Mama, 246-0730.
Hey, listen, if you're about to paint the outside of your house, you really ought to meet the problem solver. Sapelin introduces Ultimate, an acrylic latex house paint that solves problems. Hello, what's your problem?
Hello, Ultimate. Frankly, I'd rather be out in my boat than painting my house. Can you save me time?
Sure. Sapelin's Ultimate covers all exterior surfaces in one coat, which, of course, saves you time. Bon voyage. Hello, what's your problem?
Hello there, Ultimate.
Yeah.
Look here, buddy. After I paint my house this next time, I'd like never to see another paintbrush. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Well, we can't promise forever, but Ultimate is so durable that it comes with a 10-year limited warranty. No yellowing, and it resists peeling for 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
Whew, that's incredible.
No, that's Ultimate. And don't forget, Ultimate's 10-year limited warranty means that the next time you paint can be up to you, not up to the paint. Hello, what's your problem?
Ultimate Sapling has a 10-year limited warranty, and it's at your Sapling dealers now. Also available in interior paints. Now, if you're the parent or a relative of a 6 to 12-year-old, there's an opportunity to do something very special that your child will appreciate for years to come. You can take advantage of a special introductory offer to Cricket magazine and help your child discover the pleasure of good reading. Cricket, well, it's full of laughter and knowledge, and every month Cricket brings a parade of could have been or might be someday stories, magic tricks and puzzles and dozens of things that 6 to 12-year-olds love. Cricket is offering a no-obligation 9-month subscription for only $8.97, and if the first issue doesn't convince you and your young reader that Cricket is the very best children's magazine around, the first issue is yours to keep free. Call toll-free 800-453-2400 to order Cricket's 9-month subscription for $8.97. You can call toll-free 800-453-2400. Now, there's an easier way to make baby furniture or kids' toys look bright and new. You can bring dull kitchen cabinets to a colorful shine, even brighten up dingy walls, and you can do it with Varathane colors in plastic. Now, with colors in plastic, you'll get more than just a pretty color. You'll get a tough, long-lasting plastic coating that protects against stains and spills, and it resists chipping and peeling as well. Now, Varathane colors in plastic comes in a rainbow of vivid, glossy colors that enhance, and they highlight, and they protect wood and plaster and most paintable surfaces. And since it's lead-free, it's even safe to use on the baby's crib. Colors in plastic goes on easily with a whisk of the brush, or spray it on if you prefer. It levels itself to a smooth, even finish, and it dries quickly. Use Varathane colors in plastic, the bright way to a perfect finish. The colors in plastic is available at Sussex Plaza Paint and Paper in Sussex and U.S. Timber Products in Secaucus, Young Paint in Fanwood, and Built Right Lumber 7 Mill, and that's in Edison, New Jersey.
As every visitor to China has observed, all Chinese people, both men and women, get up and offer their seats to foreigners. Good afternoon, Jack. This is Patricia McCann. One such foreigner is our guest this afternoon, Dorothy Salisbury, wife of former New York Times associate editor Harrison Salisbury. In any case, Dorothy will give you her impressions of the new China this afternoon, plus very practical travel tips in case you ever go there. Above all, don't forget those earplugs or that jar of Sanka. And Dorothy will explain everything after the news on WOR, the heart of New York.
Hi. I'm Sidney Fields, only human columnist of the New York Daily News, inviting you to join me and the rest of the Bulldog team tonight at 7 for another edition of the WOR Daily News Bulldog Edition. The Bulldog comes alive right here on WOR, the heart of New York. Join us.
That's the Sir John Gielgud of the Daily News staff. Sidney Fields. He's the husband of Dorothy Fields, who produces this show. Such diction. Critic Circle, Jack O'Brien, and my guest today are Charles Francisco, who has written a book, The Radio City Music Hall. It's an affectionate history of the world's greatest theater. Dutton is the publisher. With him is Duffy Hake. It's Muriel Duffy is her nickname, Hake, who was the first Rockette and was in charge of the Rockettes right up until 71. And Paul Hakon, who was an old friend of mine. And I didn't even know Paul was coming, and I was so delighted when I heard your word, Paul. And you're Dutch, I gather, H-A-A?
Danish.
Huh? Danish?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess the double A made me think it was Dutch.
Danish. Mm-hmm.
That's how well I know you, I guess. But I do know him. I do know him for an awfully long time.
For many years.
I can't remember how many times I've written about Paul Hakon. A marvelous ballet dancer. He was, I know you were with Pavlova's company.
That's right, yes. And I danced with so many different ballerinas at Radio City Music Hall.
Which ones?
Well, one of the ones that I danced mostly with was Patricia Bowman.
Yeah.
And she was a beautiful ballerina.
Paul was the Nureyev of his day.
He certainly was. He was the Nijinsky of his day. As a matter of fact, I think that one of the things I try to point out in the book is the fact that the music hall was tremendously important to ballet. Because it was just a budding form in this country at that time.
And they had the corps de ballet there from the beginning.
I was very
It was the first permanent corps de ballet in the country.
I was very disheartened when they gave up the ballet there because it was such a wonderful training ground, for young dancers. And believe me, if you could cover that stage there, you could work any place.
It's like a football field.
And it was marvelous because every once in a while they would put the corps de ballet and the Rockettes together, so that meant that 72 dancers were in a line.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very hard to stand out among that many people.
Who was the choreographer most of the time?
Florence Rogie.
Florence
Rogie. R-O-G-G-E.
Yes.
Florence Rogie. And Russell Market was the brains of the Rockettes.
He was a
Leon
creator and founder of it.
Who was the other producer besides Leon?
Well, Russell.
Russell was associate producer for many years.
And then in the last few years, you had Peter Gennaro.
Peter Gennaro.
Who was a great modern dancer.
Yeah.
John Jackson.
That's right.
For a while, another man that was very famous because of one particular film, which I understand they're going to make into a Broadway show possibly, came in after he left his movie careers.
Marc Platt.
Who for a while was a producer.
Marc Platt was in the original Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Right, he was a fantastic dancer.
Yeah.
And I think he had, did he have a glass eye?
Gee, not that I ever heard of, no.
I can remember him telling me one time that his big problem in movies was that he had an eye problem.
Oh, really?
He was a big ballet dancer, where Paul Haycon is about standing.
Yeah, he's...
yeah. You're not tiny, but you're about standing.
They say I look tall when I worked on stage,
Well, the great dancers always did, yeah.
But Mark was a really big man.
Yeah.
And he did some very, very good shows at the music hall. I just don't remember how long he was in the producing
relatively
field.
short period of time.
I would say maybe a year, 2 years, possibly.
And I saw him in other shows on Broadway. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, he was so big. It was unusual to see him.
Yeah, but yet he was a tremendous dancer.
And people got him mixed up with Marc Platt, who was a singer, a baritone, who sang the original Begin to Begin in Jubilee, I think, was the show. But the names are all so similar, otherwise they weren't.
Yeah, no. But he had that sort of reddish hair, very, very good-looking man, as well as tremendous.
Charles, what gave you the idea to do the book in the first place?
Well, I suppose, it seems like almost everybody, they say that 250 million people have been to the music hall since the place opened, or at least they paid admission. And I was one of them. And naturally, like everybody else, I say in the book, the music hall, a lot of times you go there when you're a kid. And you remember the Christmas show and all of that nonsense, and you think, boy, what a huge place this is. And I think the music hall is one of the few places that does not shrink in size as you get older and taller, because it is a huge place.
An old theory of relativity. We go back and see your first grade class.
That's right, and it looks tiny, but the music hall still looks huge, because it is huge. I've been friends with a lot of the gals, and especially the Rockettes.
You have, huh?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact.
Touché.
But one of them, when the place was going to close last winter, they were threatening to tear it down, and the Rockettes and everybody at the music hall, all the backstage people, the performers and what have you, got together a show people's committee to save the music hall. Now, they didn't know that they were, after all, fighting the Rockefeller interests, and they owned the theater, and they wanted to tear it down. But the people said, we can't let that happen. So they formed a show people's committee and started collecting signatures and petitions and whatever to try to get popular support. And one of the gals came to me and said, Chuck, you're a writer. Would you help us write some letters to the editors and things? So I started doing that on a voluntary basis, and it suddenly occurred to me, there's never been a book on the music hall. And what a fantastic subject. And it was a very fortunate thing that happened to me, because I've always been interested in the music hall, and I have learned a lot more about it in the process, and it's made me admire the place even more.
The book is really marvelous, because it has anybody twice as good for anybody that had been there to just read all of these things that in the way of statistics.
And the book is The Radio City Music Hall. Very simple title, The Radio City Music Hall, An Affectionate History of the World's Greatest Theater, by Charles Francisco. Dutton is the publisher. I know a gentleman who was considerably responsible for the music hall not disappearing. His name is William Hassett. He's going to be the new Secretary of Commerce. He was with the Urban Development Corporation.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And he's one of those fellows. He permitted the lieutenant governor, what was her name?
Marianne Kripsek.
Who didn't know anything about what was going on, to let her take the credit for it. And she got it, and she really didn't know any of the details of how to keep this a landmark and to keep it viable as a continuing structure. And Bill Hassett did that.
Yeah.
Well, he did keep a very low profile because even in the book...
Still has a low profile.
Yeah, because at the end of the book, I talk about the fact that was such a dramatic period. You know, they had the landmark hearings and people were running around, and even on their final performance, which was last April 12th, 1978, and everybody thought until the show was over, long after the show was over, that was it. And at the last minute, the UDC and your Mr. Hassett...
I think it was 12 o'clock that night when the announcement came over that they were going to remain open for another year.
Yeah. Well, Bill Hassett owns the Statler Hotel in Buffalo. He bought that from the Hilton Corporation. He owns a lot of office buildings, a lot of residential buildings in Buffalo and elsewhere. And he tried to buy the Berkshire Hotel here. He tried to buy the Stanhope Hotel. He's now has offices in New York, of course, but he's, I guess, temporarily neutralized on his private real estate business because he's been named. Has to go through the state legislature to become Secretary of Commerce. He's also chairman of the Urban Development Corporation, for which he took $1 a year. He was also he's also chairman of the new buildings they're building way downtown.
The Battery Park?
Battery Park. He's chairman of that, for which both of those jobs he gets $1 a year. I asked him if how often he gets paid, twice a year, once a month. He will take a salary for a secretary.
Well, we can't blame him for our taxes then, right? If he gets $1 a year.
No, sir. He's a very substantial fellow, and in the background, he's not a political elective type. He's someone they reached out. As a matter of fact, I think he's a Republican, and Hugh Carey is a Democrat. Appointed him, which I think is a kind of feather in his beret. Anyway.
Indeed, yeah.
Well, to get back to Radio City Music Hall, I think Greer Garson had the record.
Yes, I believe.
For a number of...
sure of that. And then
the number of shows or a number of weeks?
The number of weeks pictures played.
Among the women, she does.
Yeah. Now, how about Cary Grant?
Cary Grant, one of the nicest things that happened... So many nice things have happened to me in the writing of this book. We sent Cary Grant galleys of the book. And I went up to Boston on business, and I told my editor, in case you need me, I gave him the name of the hotel. And I'm sitting in the hotel room in Boston. The phone rings. I pick it up, and it's Cary Grant. Now, Cary Grant is a very reclusive kind of fellow, you know. He doesn't go around in public, and he doesn't sign autographs, and he very seldom,
He's good-naturedly reclusive.
Yes, that's right. He's not hard to get along with.
That phony pretensions of the ones who presume to fight photographers,
I was just so pleased because we chatted away for about 45 minutes. He loved the book, and he told me stories about the music hall that I wish I could have gotten in the book, but by that time it was too late, although I do have a lot of stories about Cary Grant in there. But he told me, he said... he was absolutely in love with the music hall. He was the all-time box office champ. And he told me that when he later got control of his pictures, he would actually time the pictures to make sure that they would fit into the music hall format, because that's where he wanted to open. And he told me that he actually could recoup 1/3 of the cost of his negative in 8 weeks at the music hall. He also told me that he used to hide behind the curtain on the coral staircase at the side of the house where he could see the screen and he could see the audience at the same time. And he said, I'd watch for a particular piece of comedic business, especially if it was one I worked out myself. And I'd wait for it to come up and I'd watch the audience. And he said, my God, what a laugh. He said it was the greatest thrill of his entire life was to do that. Because he said by seeing the laugh and hearing the laugh and looking at the faces, he thought that he really had contributed something with his life by being an actor.
Very few people knew how hard Cary Grant worked on a role. He had it worked out. He was a comedian. He was a left-handed comedian, if you notice. When he would gesture, he'd be throwing the left shoulder and the left arm into it. And no one understood how much he worked on a role and on little bits of business. Of course, he came out of the old music hall tradition. He was a stilt walker.
He was telling me about the Hippodrome Theater, as a matter of fact.
On 6th Avenue,
I never had a chance to see it. But,
Jumbo played there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it was a strange thing. The woman that was the wardrobe mistress at the music hall when it opened had worked with Cary Grant at the Hippodrome. She was at that time a ballet dancer. And so anytime he was ever in New York, he always stopped by to see Florence Anderson.
Florence Anderson,
yes.
Goodness, yes.
You had a wardrobe mistress. She wasn't the boss wardrobe mistress, but she was a wardrobe. She worked on the costumes. And I always knew how long a show would run at the music hall within the first couple of days, because the music hall knew By the box office of the first 3 days, they knew how long that show would run, and then they would commission the making of costumes for the next one.
Oh, yes.
And she worked nights from about 6 o'clock at night until about 11 as a checkroom girl in a restaurant that I went to, a neighborhood restaurant, a very nice one on 58th Street. And now it's academic. She's retired a couple of years ago. And that's how I would have in my column when the next show, and they would not announce. They used to go crazy in the publicity department. How I would have it. It was just a little trick.
Very often a show would open, they say, well, this is going to be 4 weeks. And
once in a while,
right then and there. Once in a while, too. And of course, when after the opening policy was not successful, we did 5 shows a day and a new show every week.
Yeah, that's the thing. In the beginning, they did a new show every week. And when you think about how the Rockets in particular, well, all the performers, but the Rockets, because it's such an active thing, they 5 shows a day, and that's 7 days a week.
Yes,
and they had to find a place to rehearse the next show each week.
But Charles, do you remember when you and when all of us were kids, the neighborhood movie houses had 4 shows a week?
Yeah. Is that right? You mean they would change the bill every... yeah.
And they never got a first-run show the way they get now with the Sutton and the way they get at the Lowe's. They would have Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, or sometimes Sunday and Monday. Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's right.
The most you'd get would be 3 shows a week. And sometimes for a not very good show, you'd get 4. And I love that because you can see all your shows, not immediately after the first run, but within a month.
Oh, yeah. And, I was telling somebody...
It was cheaper, too.
I was going to say that. And also, when you went to a movie, you got to see a newsreel, you got to see a cartoon, and many times a double feature. And today, for the huge price, you see the picture, and that is it.
Yes, I went to see Manhattan, Woody Allen's movie, which is marvelous. It was 4 of us. It cost me $16. That hurt. When I think that I saw it happen one night for 25 cents at night.
Yeah.
Well, the music hall used to be $1.10, and $2.20 in the loges, or $1.65 in the loges. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, at least I know it was under $1 practically.
Well, the music. And I'm talking about at night. The opening price in the afternoon.
Probably $1.10 would be pretty
probably
close
55
to it.
cents.
But it was a long time. The price increase there was so gradual.
Well, they had such a great big gross to start out with,
But they really were a long time raising their price, and the price change used to be 6 o'clock at night. And I know from George Hannaford, one of the house managers, he used to say they would wait for 3 lights to change on 6th Avenue, and then they'd change the price when it got to be 6 o'clock.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they would give the people maybe that were standing across the street waiting to beat that price change, and he said they'd wait about 3 lights.
And they would put they'd put an usher behind that last person.
Probably
and the ones
so,
who came
yes,
after them.
Probably so.
I know all the tricks of getting in early, get in for 60 cents or something like
opening price was probably 50, 60 cents, something like that.
Well, the top price in other cities, I remember at Shays Buffalo, where I was an usher, the top price was 55 cents. The top price was 55
Sure.
cents. And New Year's Eve is a very big special show, $1.10. We have a message.
Hi, this is Eli Wallach for Emigrant. Back when the only reputation I had was as a pretty fair stickball player, I went everywhere with a kid named Lefty. He was the only 12-year-old I knew who could hit a Spalding 3 sewers. Of course, back then, all the people I knew lived within 2 blocks of my house. Hey, Lefty, if you're listening in now, I've branched out since then. And so has another local New Yorker, Emigrant Savings Bank. Emigrant now has 30 offices to make it the most convenient savings bank in town. They're not only in Manhattan, Queens, Long Island, and Westchester, they're in Brooklyn, too. So even if you never left the old neighborhood, Lefty, you can put your money in a bank that's close to home.
You work hard for your money, New York and at Emigrant. We work hard for it, too.
Emigrant, with 30 offices, is a member of the FDIC.
Extra strength Windex cleans a lot more than windows.
Clean, clean.
Mirrors and pictures, lamps and vases, tile and fixtures, chrome and cabinets, fingerprints on countertops. Clean them all up with Windex. Discover the power of extra strength Windex with Ammonia D to cut greasy dirt better without streaks.
Shine, shine.
Blenders and toasters, sinks and doorknobs, ashtrays and coasters, windows, telephones, dashboards, bumpers, and a whole lot more we won't have time for.
Clean, clean.
Extra strength Windex. Shine, shine.
The two leading polishes, furniture polishes, are Pledge and Behold, and they have a lot of good things in common, but both are fine for everyday cleaning and shining and protecting, but the things they don't have in common makes Behold a better buy. Behold cleans greasy marks better than Pledge. If you mark a table with two greasy crayons, you can spray one mark with Pledge, the other with Behold, and wipe them up. Then you'll see that Behold cleans marks better. Get Behold and get a better value. Switch to Behold for a clean, beautiful shine on your beautiful wood furniture, and Behold, a lot of cleaning for less money. Now, for some little-known facts about vitamins. That's brought to you by Letterly Laboratories. And Letterly is a pioneer in vitamin research since 1929. Now, what's the richest source of vitamin C? Nope, not the orange. Juice from the Puerto Rican cherry contains 85 times as much vitamin C as the same size glass of orange juice. Something else you ought to know, unlike several other vitamins, C and most of the B vitamins are not stored in the body. And without a reserve supply, you need daily replacements in the food you eat. That's why, to make sure they're getting enough B and C, more and more people are taking Stress Tab 600. And that's because Stress Tab 600 concentrates on vitamins the body does not store, with a high-potency supply of B-complex and 600 milligrams of vitamin C plus vitamin E. Stress Tab 600. Now, that's a high-potency formula for the way we live today. Try it. Stress Tab 600 is a product of Letterly Laboratories, and it's at your pharmacy right now. Now, everything will be coming up roses on Thursday, June 7th, as the queen of musical comedy, Ethel Merman, appears in concert at the Westchester County Center in White Plains. Don't miss your chance to see this irrepressible, marvelous Ethel Merman and the distinctive style and voice that have made her one of the greatest luminaries in the entertainment world. Appearing with Ethel Merman will be the renowned conductor, Eric Knight, along with the extraordinary County Symphony of Westchester. And the concert, which is sponsored by the Gannett, Westchester Rockland newspapers, will be the official kickoff event of the second annual Just for Fun Westchester Weekend. Enjoy the magic of Ethel Merman, and boy, she has the magic. That's in her first New York area appearance in over 7 years, and that's at the Westchester County Center on Thursday, June 7th at 8 p.m. It'll be an evening to remember. Tickets on sale at the Westchester County Center box office in White Plains. And for more ticket information, call 914-949-8900. 914-949-8900. Ethel Merman is just marvelous. He was the first person I saw in a show in 1934 on my first visit, on my first day in New York City. Anything goes. And boy, what a show that was, and what a star Ethel was and is.
Is, oh.
She has a new album that's not out yet. It's going to be out very shortly in the next few weeks. And it's all of her great hits set against very modern hustle type
I see. Disco hustle type.
It's the rhythm has changed. Mm-hmm. But she still has her rhythm in it. And, Cole Porter, Irving Berlin said, if you don't want people to hear your lyrics, don't give your songs to Ethel Merman to sing.
Well, that's certainly true.
I suppose she must have appeared at the music hall once or twice, and benefits.
I was just going to say some of the big benefits during the war, bundles for Britain and
things like that.
All those big.
I only saw one
big stars.
One theater as big as Radio City Music Hall, but it was about 100 or 200 seats smaller. It was in Tokyo. I went to there was a vaudeville show in Tokyo, and it was built very much like it. Little tack here. It was not kept in that beautiful fashion that the music hall has been kept in. And I was always amazed at the lounge in the men's room. It was like a mansion.
Well, those are incredible.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest works of modern art. When Donald Desky, who designed the music hall, he was an interesting man. He's responsible for all that beautiful elegance you see there. He guaranteed the Rockefellers when he made his presentation that he would furnish the greatest private collection of modern art in America. And I think he's done it, because every one of the withdrawing rooms, as John D. Rockefeller Jr. referred to them in his comment, are sort of like little mini galleries with beautiful paintings, murals, and what have you.
And these things have all been restored to original form now, because so many things had, sort of gone down with the theater losing money and policy being of importance, but these things the original carpet has been remade, and the theater is completely carpeted, but it's the same exact design that the theater opened with. The wallpaper the drapes and all the art. The men's room reminded me of it because they have, somebody was telling me, little signs.
Have you been in the men's room?
No.
Duffy, I thought maybe you were the Privy Council.
You're very good.
That's one title I didn't have. But anyway, they have little signs saying that they have had permission of the landmark people to restore this room to exactly as it was. And they have all been, and all the furniture has been redone and is just as it was when the theater opened in 1952.
The powder rooms there, the withdrawing rooms, are so important. You don't call it a John's, you call it a John D.
Yes.
I can tell you that the ladies' room was very lovely.
I was never in there. No, I didn't have the urge to go.
Well, there were so many of them. I was amazed in doing the research for this book that I read in an architectural magazine that Despy designed 31 restrooms, or whatever you want to call them, in the music hall. Now, I know there aren't that many in the public area, so that must include the ones backstage and in the offices and what have you.
All the mezzanines have one, plus the big lounge, grand lounge. They're very...
The Grand Lounge is so beautiful that you could put a grand ball in there.
Yeah.
You sure could.
Outside the men's and ladies' room, and they would not be clobbered by the most beautiful women in the world.
Oh, no.
They would not.
That's my special favorite. I like the Grand Lounge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You have
That's
we'll make you Privy Council. But, you know, the architect for that was so... perspicacious. The man who designed the Yale Bowl got it all finished, and there was no men's or ladies' room in the whole place.
Really?
Yeah. Paul Haycon?
Yes, sir.
What do you do now?
Oh, I don't do much of anything right now.
Well, I don't care how old you are. You don't look it.
I don't dance anymore.
No, you injured your leg, I think, at one point.
I don't dance.
How did you injure your leg?
I was teaching. I injured it over in Europe, actually. I injured it in Riga.
In Russia?
Yes, well, it was not Russia then, it was Latvia then.
Latvia, yes.
Yes. I danced both in Latvia and Estonia.
What are the various companies you worked with from the time you came over here?
The various companies that I worked with? Well, I worked with Michael...
Did you dance with the... one of the Scandinavian ballet companies over there?
I danced, I originally came from the Royal Ballet in Denmark.
Yeah, Danish Ballet.
The Danish Ballet. But I worked in the Folkene Ballet at Lewiston Stadium, which was tremendous. That was, we performed to something like 24,000 or 25,000 people at one time at the open-air stadium up in 135th Street, was it?
That's right. I used to go there when I first came to New York. Very cheap to hear symphony music or see a ballet.
Yes. And then, of course, I was with the Pavlova Company and also with the Mortkin Company here. And then I was with a thing called Ballet Caravan, which later became American Ballet Theater.
First ballet company I saw, it was second. First one I saw was All Tutus. Next one was the Youth Ballet.
Oh, that was fantastic. Yes.
Youth Ballet. They did the Green Table.
The Green Table, yes.
Which was a ballet, a very evocative ballet about the League of Nations.
Diplomacy.
League of Nations, yeah.
It was all done in pantomime, the first part where all the diplomats were across the table.
Yeah, they were across the billiard table, and the various diplomats were the billiard balls being manipulated.
That's interesting.
I was very pleased, by the way, that at our publication party for the book, we were able to reunite Paul and Patricia Bowman. Patricia Bowman, who came out from Las Vegas.
I was invited and couldn't get there.
I wish you had come.
Listen, it's terrific just getting together with you people right here. And especially Duffy Hake, who was one of the original Rockettes and later became the boss of the Rockettes until 1971. Do you tell your age?
Well, I guess I just about have to. Everybody sort of clocks it when you say 1932, where everybody automatically starts to add or subtract. And so I'm not bashful about it.
Okay, how old are you?
She's not.
I'm 68.
And you danced right up until you were 58 then,
I was 57 or 58 when I last worked in line.
Yeah. Now, did you work in the line, fairly often from time to time?
Oh, we had our times when there would be 2, 3, 4 girls out.
Yeah.
And then you had to start juggling places and changing this and changing that.
And being in different places, you had to know everybody's position and possibly reverse your steps.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Very complicated.
It was not dull, let's say that.
Did you ever do ballet?
that was my first training, and dancing was ballet.
You look like a New Yorker to me. Are you originally a New Yorker?
No, I'm from Chicago.
That's pretty nearly the same.
I feel
How did you get into ballet?
Well, I really didn't actually work in ballet, but I had the ballet training, which is really the background of dancing and the basis for it.
Yeah, Robert Alton was an earlier choreographer, and he put an awful lot of ballet into it.
Yes. Well, because, you just have to have that ballet training and background.
Goward Campion had it. Goward Jean was the name of it. He was a 16 or 17-year-old dancer in hotel ballrooms. Thank you very much, Duffy Hake. Thank you, Charles Francisco, and most especially my old friend, Gardner Hakan. I can still see it on the marquee. Reginald Gardner and Paul Hakan. This is Critic Circle. I'm Jack O'Brien. This is WOR New York.
This is Patricia McCann. When you go to China, don't forget those earplugs or that jar of Sanka. After the news on WOR New York.
At 2 p.m., this is WOR News. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Harry Hennessy. The FAA has grounded all U.S.-registered DC-10 jetliners, including those that have been inspected for defects. A federal judge in Texas has been shot to death outside his San Antonio apartment. New York State gasoline retail